And hi there. We are live with Jenny Blake, getting her dance on. The
On
Wish
my
List
bouncing
is
ball.
her walkout song and a little bounce. It's a good one. We'll let her roll a little. This is my very fancy audio
Yeah.
equipment here.
Wow.
My iPhone. We'll leave that running in the back. Jenny Blake, for anyone who's not familiar, is I don't even know. There's so many ways to describe you. But Free Time is the latest book. Lose the Busy Work, Love Your Business. The basic principle there, I put it in the title of the episode, is in half the time you can make twice the money if you figure out what you're doing. Your dog's barking in the back. My dog is actually calm for once. So that's all good. You're coming to us from New York City, yes, where you live with. We have a long story to tell about how we met and all that good stuff. But the fun part, jumping ahead, is we both ended up randomly, I would say, marrying Lebanese folk. So I don't know what that says about anyone or any which way, but the real quick story is Jenny was a student of CrossFit, where I was teaching CrossFit in New York City, and I still remember your dislocated finger in medicine ball. It was medicine ball, dodgeball, like silliness that CrossFit would present, and I think you came up and you're like, "Hey, is this normal?" And like you had like a finger injury from that weird game. So anyway, I don't know if you seem to have struggle.
I don't remember that, but I remember that CrossFit was always tweaking me somehow. That was taking me away from yoga and Pilates. And
Mm,
ultimately, my allegiance returned to yoga and Pilates because I was
mhm.
getting things were getting wonky and I wasn't happy about that. So that's why I didn't last too long.
That's all right. I'm not. I'm
Probably
not.
I know it's my fault. It was my form. It was, but
And that's one thing we're going to talk about today. And I think jumping ahead is every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. So if my sister just complained, she does a lot of Pilates, and she's like, my hands hurt now. I have a hand injury, and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't really train your hands the way it probably should. So it's a system designed to get the results it gets. And that's kind of what I would describe, because you don't have an exact like title, which is okay, which is perfect in this modern world. And I think it's a beautiful thing to see working with entrepreneurs, being a solopreneur, and putting these books together. So let's jump back to life after college. So, and you kind of were telling the experience you just kind of had, right? You had the folks a few steps behind you, and I think sharing the, like, this is the life journey you're going through, and you're going to share that. Then you went over to pivot. The only move that matters is your next one. And now Free Time, where again we're talking about being more productive and kind of joining the ranks, I would say, of a lot of folks you have on your podcast, like Cal Newport and folks like that, and two very popular podcasts. Which again, I'm similar to you. I do have a second podcast, the Man Better podcast, with personal trainer back in New York City.
awesome.
So that's kind of the story. And so, since the only move that matters is your next one, I assume you still are with that. You've got 3 books. You've just published this third one, but what's the fourth one? What's the next move, Jen?
Oh my goodness. Well, see, what you didn't say is I leave 5.5 years on average between every book. So I don't put any pressure to know what's next until I really see through the current project. And that's hard to do because I think if you're a creative or entrepreneurial person or you like building things, it's so tempting to chase the shiny
Hmm.
objects of what you can build and create. But then marketing and maintaining and growing is a whole nother bag. So it's actually stretchier and edgier for me to try to stay put. I'm telling myself I'm not allowed to create anything new. I'm not even allowed to think about the next book until I really make sure that Free Time has found its footing. And book marketing tends to go in waves, slow and steady, just like podcast growth, which I had a friend say to me recently, podcast grows slower than mold. That made me laugh. That was so funny. It's true. You read the book. I'm always open to a nonlinear breakthrough. I never want to assume something's going to be a long, hard slog or anything. And it's, as you know, Bo, with any journey, especially health and fitness, it's like it's about putting in the daily reps
Hmm.
and not being overly attached to the outcome.
Yeah, and you're one of the best curators of quotes I've ever seen. I have to put you on that pedestal.
Wow.
And my
Thank
my
you.
big my big quote that I'll throw out regarding that is just get 1% better every day. That I try to incorporate. And people always see it somewhere else, and they're like, "Hey, they're using your quote," and I'm like, I can't take credit for it, even though I jumped on it and I use it as much as possible. But yeah, it's funny how those things kind of build up, and it's always good to attribute them to folks. But yeah, and again, if anyone goes through the book again, just if you just go through and read the quotes, I think you can take a ton away. And then I think you stopped telling the Chinese proverb of the "we'll see." I think listening to your
Oh,
old
I love
podcasts,
that one.
I know it's
That's a
one you
life
love,
mantra.
but I feel like for some reason I listened to when I was listening to the older podcast, the Pivot podcast. I felt like you said that every other episode, and I don't mean that in any kind of negative way. It was a great thing. It just kept coming up. It seems where yeah, if you have something great like that, it just keeps coming up and hopefully pushing you in the right direction. Um,
And just the equanimity that
but yeah, so
when something good happens, like, that's great, and just don't get overly attached, and then same thing on the negative, and for me, yeah, that one's so good, so good. And it's just such a reminder not to stay down. My latest that I keep referencing is from visualizevalue.com. Failure is the frame, not the picture. That if you frame the picture, let's say a stock chart in the wrong place, it looks like a failure, but then actually the chart's gonna go right back up. Here's hoping to the moon. Um, but but you can't call something too early. And it's easy to get discouraged in some of these long journeys, like the
yeah.
long arc of creativity or fitness, all of that. It's so easy to just get hit a dip and get discouraged and want to quit. And it's like, don't call the game too soon.
Well, that's the whole Seth Godin, the dip, as you even
Yes.
put it in there.
Another
And so,
gem.
right. And sometimes it is the right decision to quit. But,
I know. See,
everyone's,
that's where this gets tricky is like
mhm,
someone asked me that. When do you pivot? When do you persevere? Like with all of these motivational mantras, okay, great. But then every now and then you do need to quit and say no and walk away.
mhm. And a lot of the stuff you throw out there to me comes across as kind of a stoic almost philosophy,
Mhm.
dare I say. And I don't know if you're into any of the stoic work or Ryan Holiday, any of that stuff, or is that something that you've
Yeah, Ryan's been
picked up?
on the show.
Hmm.
I did not I loved Marcus Aurelius's meditations. I didn't become like stoic obsessed any more than any other kind of wisdom tradition. Buddhism, I would say, has stuck out the most and influenced me the most, and Taoism. So reading the Tao Te Ching and any interpretations and commentary around that really changed my life in my early 20s. And then a lot of Buddhist texts and ideas resonated with me more than anything I had learned growing up in terms of religion or spirituality. And you
Yeah.
mentioned that we're both married to Lebanese folks, so I also have to say Khalil Gibran is an absolutely beautiful, brilliant poet, and you'll see that my nod to Lebanon was opening and closing the book with some Khalil goodness.
Yeah, and I'll share with you. I don't know if you've ever seen my
Oh my
Buddhist-ish
goodness.
tattoo, and for anyone
No.
listening, that's a modified unalome. So I don't know if you recognize the symbol. Again, unalome became
No.
pretty popular. It's the path to enlightenment, and so you have the crazy part. This is the life after college. These
Wow.
are the pivots, and then this is getting free time until you get to
So
enlightenment.
good. This is the first
Um,
tattoo translation of my body of work I've ever seen.
Sort
Amazing.
of. I might have, yeah, but yeah,
No, I don't mean one would cause the other, but, like, I've never seen my work as, interpreted via tattoo. That's very cool.
and it is kind of that life path. And every time I look at it, it is like, where am I today? Because I might have fallen back a few steps and like, oh, I need to reinvent myself again. Or
Yeah.
which pivot am I making? And that's the one of the things I want to get your expertise on is fixing the healthcare space, which is one of the themes of this podcast. And so something that comes up time and time again, I have some of the biggest I've been lucky enough to have some of the biggest fitness influencers on here, and just talking about, is this a broken system? Is there hope? And my brain is like, we need a Jack LaLanne to rise up, a Mr. Rogers of fitness to kind of take the reins, and we just haven't had that. And there's so much nonsense and noise that it would be amazing if we have that. Some other folks have come back to me and saying like, hey, we need nodes, and we need people to kind of grassroots, kind of what we see in yoga studios or Pilates studios or CrossFit. But it comes back to, and I don't know if you know the book Upstream, where every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. I threw that out there earlier. And the healthcare system is certainly one that is questionable. So I don't know. I haven't heard you. I've heard you allude to some healthcare kind of analogies and things like that. Of if you miss something in a health exam, it's probably you might have wasted your time. You're not going to really get the result if you didn't get to the heart of the problem. So I don't know how familiar you are with the fitness healthcare space, but since that's a lot of folks that listen here, I don't know if you have any big thoughts, and you can just solve the whole thing right now. No pressure.
Yeah, that's what Bo said before we jump on. I know it's like I wrote business and career books, and then the thing is, I feel like with healthcare in particular, it's become so central these last few years, and there's been more stress, more pressure, more divisiveness, and everyone's talking about at least epidemiology and our health and our immunology and our immune systems. And it's funny you mentioned that like we need a Jack LaLanne or to rise up because I do feel like there are some very prominent podcasters who I have to say I appreciate tremendously. And I feel like a lot of the successful male podcasters are quite health oriented, like
Hmm.
that they are really emphasize, habits, routine, working out. You see them like hunting, practicing archery, like
Yeah.
crossfitting. And you have guys like Jocko and Andrew Huberman and Tim Ferriss and Joe Rogan who are like the epitome of, I'm not saying in the healthcare space as a whole, but I feel like these are guys who are saying your health and fitness and body, feeling good in your body and being strong in your body, just like you both, like you've been this way too. This is the day I met you, does set such a positive example for the people who are listening. And I know some of those people are controversial, but I just appreciate that at least through the forum of podcasts, we can get exposure and that a lot of the people who are succeeding are the ones promoting taking care of yourself. Now, of
Yeah.
course, there's a lot of like comics and, maybe those guys are just drinking, smoking when they record their
Yeah.
podcasts. It's not the epitome of health necessarily.
Well, that's the great part, and the tricky part there is, I think folks will take out what they want to hear out of it, and yeah, Tim Ferriss' 4 Hour Body seems to be decades ago, feels like, but he did talk about, again, it's all about hacking and just trying to get to that lizard brain, and what can I do if I can take one pill? Oh, it's MCT oil, it's coconut
Mm,
oil in my coffee or butter in my coffee. That's the thing, and then those kind of fade and wane, and that's the nature of where we are with whether it's with TikTok challenges and things like that. And so it's an interesting thing that you bring that up, because that was the other thing with like Joe Rogan, right? Bring it, saying stuff, just being like, oh, and having controversial people on and being like, okay, that sounds reasonable, and everyone else is like, no, no, there's no science. Like, we need to trust the
right.
scientists, and where can we strike that balance? And so, yeah,
I
it's a fun
I
topic.
think what's hard, I think, I'm so glad you brought that up because trust is at stake right now, especially as it relates to health. And it's so hard because we don't have one mainstream media channel anymore. And it feels like polarization is happening on all sides. And even this phrase, trust the scientists, but it's like, but some of the scientists are paid off by the big pharma companies,
Right.
and then some of them aren't. And it's really hard for the average person to know who to trust, or their trust has been broken by pharmaceutical companies selling opioid products
Hmm.
and getting everybody hooked and having McKinsey inform them exactly how
Right.
to get more people on opiates. It's like, and then they see that destruction immediately in their family. And then they're suddenly less trusting when everyone is saying, listen to the pharma, these angelic pharma companies. It's like, I understand. I'm not saying where I fall on any of this. I'm just saying I really understand people who become distrusting. Or I've had many medical doctors, more in New York than anywhere else, that don't give a shit about you. They don't care an iota. Like they're just moving you through a factory of their day to day. And like, if you don't stay on it as the CEO of your health and wellness, they don't care. Not every doctor. There are some doctors that are amazing. I'm saying in my experience in 11 years of living in the city, it's been hard for me to find those and hard to connect with them. And it gets really disheartening when you show up to someone you think is an expert or you think should be professional and they're bullying or mean or dismissive.
Hmm.
Like I recently went in, I have had incredibly painful ear infections. Three in a row after within about a year's time, I think resulting from second generation AirPods. Anyway, I finally figured out who was covered by my health insurance provider,
Mm.
which I pay $1,700 a month for me and my husband. Like I could be buying a used car every single month. And I finally go in, and she just looks at me with like complete almost disdain, like, why are you here? Your ears are fine. And oh, were they really hurting? It felt like someone was just poking me with a knife in my jaw or punching my face all day, every day. It was a 10 out of 10 pain. And here I am, finally made it to her office, figured out the labyrinth, and to feel so dismissed. It's like,
Mm.
sorry to go on a rant. Now I'm not
Yeah.
talking about fixing the system, but I'm talking about why people become disenfranchised and distrusting.
Yeah, no, and it's all super valid points. And this is one thing I preach for folks from this perspective of healthcare is the functional medicine side of it, where cost is what you pay, value is what you get. So for the $1,700 you're paying a month, you're not getting a lot of value, it sounds like.
I'm just getting
And
like downside protection that, oh, if some catastrophic thing happens, we won't go
right.
bankrupt because of hospital bills.
Right.
That's
What
it.
if you're not familiar, there's these things called health shares, which is what I use, Liberty Health Share. And at the end of the day, I pay 239 for myself. Maha has she got real insurance because having a baby is a little more in depth. But for me, it's 239 a month, and that's my insurance,
That's
literally,
amazing.
of saying, hey, and again, if you're relatively healthy, if the catastrophic piece is much more affordable, and it's a little bit more uncertain. And if I actually, just as a quick aside, I in New York City, walking across the street, and I walked into a construction truck, and I had to get 16 stitches here. And guess what? The medical bill for
Oh my
16 stitches at
goodness.
Lenox Hill is $16,000. So luckily, I had just gotten the Liberty Health Share, I think 6 days prior to that happening.
Wow. Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
I think I only ended up having to pay about $500. And yeah, it was something that I would say there's these kind of concepts that, again, folks like the Joe Rogans, Tim Ferriss, all these folks can slowly kind of put out there. And I picked up a lot of these things from different authorities in the space, and these different hacks and things like that. So there's something there of can we start to elevate
Yes.
the concepts.
And now we're all learning from you on this show in this conversation. And I just feel like if you turn on the TV on any, like when I go visit my grandma or my mom, you turn on the TV and 75% of what you see and hear is pharmaceutical
Hmm.
drugs. And I'm not saying there isn't a time and place, and very valid, of course, for what you need when. I'm taking one now, But however, the doctors prescribe them like candy. And I remember
Hmm.
growing up, I had acne my entire teens and into adulthood, and I was prescribed every drug under the sun trying to fix it. And nobody ever asked me, "What are you eating?" And when I stopped eating dairy later, when
Hmm.
I was like 30 years old, probably was doing some keto, paleo, one of those. And I cut out dairy when that was trending, and it went away. And same with cutting out sugar. And it's like, but nobody had ever, in decades of going to dermatologists, no one had ever asked me, "What are you eating?" Or what. One time they asked, "What's your stress level?" But that was a non question because I didn't do anything about that. And
Right.
so I just get so curious, as you said, like of the lifestyle piece. And I'm not saying that that's a cure all, but the people who care enough to ask or can encourage you and can say, try these experiments with your food or your fitness or whatever, it's so important because it might save you. Like by the time I moved to New York, one doctor was like, "You've been killing your liver for 5 years." And I'm like, "Well, sorry, I've just taken what a doctor told me to take."
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and again, it's just such a broken system. So these are the things and the parts of the conversation I love having, and the big part there is, again, the system is designed to save our lives. It's still one of the best systems. Again, if you have you need 16 stitches, you walk in, great, you got 16 stitches, and
Yeah.
hopefully you have something there that doesn't bankrupt you. If you have cancer, there's definitely a lot of solutions, and they're probably doing the best they can to get you fixed from something like that. But it's a huge difference between surviving and
Mhm.
optimizing or thriving, which is back to your book, a lot of what you're talking about, right? Like, and as you, I think, often allude to the E Myth, and Dr. Gerber, of are you working in your business or are you working on your business, to give you that ability to step back and find a way to make twice the money in half the time. And so I don't know how you feel about the cost versus value thing. But yeah, is that something you resonate with?
Yeah, I mean, and also if you're running your own business, revenue versus profit as
Mm,
well. Like, really, a lot of business press talks about these big fancy revenue numbers, but it's if you really talk to the owner, sometimes
hmm.
they're working twice as much,
Right.
and they don't see their family, they're stressed, their health is impacted, and so you never know. Someone could be earning $10 million, but they're completely stressed, they're overweight, they don't see their family, and their take-home pay as the owner is
Hmm.
200 grand, let's say.
Right.
And then you could meet someone who's earning 600 grand and then their take home is 350 and they only
Hmm.
work 10 or 20 hours a week and they see their family and they take care of their bodies. So I
Right.
definitely am into kind of exactly as you said, like examining, cost and value. And yes, I also look at who's profiting from this or who's profiting from the pressure you feel like the fact that we all feel pressure to be on social media because well, everyone else is doing it and that's how to be successful in your career. Who's profiting from that? Well, the social media companies, for one,
Hmm.
the advertisers who pay to get in front of to get your attention, to fracture your attention. And it's not, again, it's not that we can't find things to love. And some people do love, like it does bring joy. But I really question and just always want to look at what's the profit chain. Like,
Hmm.
you had talked about the book Upstream and systems are designed to achieve things. And I also think that unfortunately, a lot in US healthcare is designed to create profit.
Hmm.
So I wish we could have nationalized healthcare. Honestly, like I don't know, maybe I'm saying that and there's some big reasons not to, but just when I hear from friends who live in the UK or Canada and it's just okay. Like you can go to a hospital and you're just not worried about going bankrupt. And if
Hmm.
things happen, it's okay. You're not in this like living in terror. So I feel like unfortunately a lot gets skewed. We have this great free market capitalism going, but a lot also gets skewed by very powerful profit seeking companies that have huge lobbies in Washington and affects
Hmm.
all of the laws and all of the advertising and all of the approvals. And there was a point during these last few years where I think the hashtag natural immunity was banned off YouTube. I don't know if it still is, but it's like, what? You know, we're banning and like jab or no jab, like we should still
Hmm.
be able to discuss what
Yeah.
also promotes natural immunity, like the fact that that would be a banned topic is wild to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just had Rob Wolf on here, as like the paleo
Oh,
guy back when he
cool.
was,
I
and
remember reading Rob's
uh,
books. Really
yeah,
great.
and he's take talks a lot about the political side of things now, and we got into some of that. And again, one of his takeaways was, yeah, we need people to get involved, and you can really make a big difference. He's got 2 kids. He ended up moving up to Montana to kind of be away from humans more than even before, where
Mm,
he always says, if I'm near an interstate, like I don't like life.
mm,
So it's that kind of creation of your own environment, but at the same time, what impact can you have, and within these systems, can we improve them, because there are a lot of problems. And yeah, to your point earlier, I think Bill Maher and Joe Rogan are two of the only folks I ever really heard willing to step up and on the bigger
yeah.
celebrity front, and say like, hey, why are we not talking about, yeah, again, healthy lifestyle, of like,
Yeah.
these are, it seems to be, if you're overweight and you're unhealthy, like you're more likely to have problems. And instead of saying mask up, vaccine, and again, this is not turning into a pro con political
Now
thing,
you
but
said
at the
all the
same time,
keywords. You're gonna get it banned now.
uh-huh.
It's gonna shut down while we're live. My
But
friend
yeah,
and I try to avoid all the keywords. We have like
mhm,
secret words because we're like
yep, yeah, let's say communism, socialism, what other ones
yeah,
can we
right,
throw
right.
out
You
there?
already said
um
vaccine. I mean, now
yeah,
now we're
Marjorie
toast.
Taylor Greene,
This is gonna this is
what
gonna
other
self-destruct. This
controversies?
video is not even gonna make it into any sort. You're getting shadow banned as we speak, Bo.
I'll take it, it's fine, it's not the end of the
Also, I feel
world.
like your listeners should know that my well, now husband, I'm pretty sure he's the one, or my friend Adam, but we nicknamed Bo Boceps because of his
Mm,
fantastic biceps. So a little gun show, little
yeah,
non-controversial gun show. So you can all call him
non-controversial.
Boceps too if you want to
Yeah.
adopt uh, our nickname for our beloved Boceps.
Um,
Oh, too
but yeah,
good.
I
I had to
appreciate you
put that
sharing
out
that.
there.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
gotta embarrass
Thank
you at
you.
some point.
And yeah, for folks, we didn't talk about how we actually met, and yeah, it was through this kind of CrossFit space, and a few mutual friends, including Brooke Seam being part of that whole
Yeah.
community. And you just had her on your podcast. She's coming out with a book, May Cause Side Effects, and I'm having her on next week, so I get a chance to read her book.
Awesome.
And yeah, it's a really cool concept. And again, if anyone goes on Jenny's podcast, the list of guests and folks that have clearly become good friends of yours through
Mm.
this world is pretty amazing. And it's one of the reasons I love doing this podcast, because I get to connect with,
Yes.
if you put yourself in the room and you're the least intelligent person there, or the least interesting person there, you tend to rise up, and that's kind of the aim, I think, of some of these things. But you have such a cool all-star cast around you. It's pretty amazing. And it's been very cool also to see, having known you for over 10 years now, I guess, around
Crazy.
2012,
Yeah. Wow.
around then. And just seeing the journey and seeing how you've certainly, the personality, the joy has always been there,
Mm.
the bubbliness, I guess, that Jenny brings is
Thank you.
that positive energy. But at the same time, I could certainly see, even as successful as coming from Google and moving to New York, it's really cool to see. Just want to throw that out, that you can see you're much more calm, much more settled,
Oh,
and there's
that
like an
makes both
evolution
sense.
even folks who I guess can go back, and I looked up your TEDx talk from 2011, I think, and
Oh,
it's kind of cool
yeah.
to see the difference
Super
in
embarrassing.
and but yeah, we want to be, and that goes back to that journey piece, right? And just
Yes.
where you are, and being able to reflect on that, and know that each of those things kind of brought us to different places. And yeah, just to not lose the thread real quick on the piece you talked about of nutrition, and nobody asked you ever about dairy and things like that
Mhm.
in terms of your diet when it comes to your health. It is one of my favorite quotes is "Let food be thy medicine," which goes all the way back to Hippocrates, kind of
Yeah.
the father of modern medicine. And there's some really powerful stuff there, where if we going back to your book, and I want to give you a chance to kind of tell folks big take home message about the book, or why they should get it if they are wasting a lot of time. Talk a lot about automation. I just listened to your episode about CRMs. If I'm sure folks are familiar
Cool.
with that out there. And so yeah, I just want to throw it back to you to ask, if you have kind of closing thoughts. I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're coming up on time a little bit too. So
Well, so much good stuff in there. First of all, happy 10-year friendiversary, both ups. It's been a delight to watch your journey as well. And I just love how you've always shown up as a leader in whatever space you're in. And you're always, as well, like creating things and putting thought leadership out there. And you're such a brilliant guy. And was lucky to get to know you long ago. And actually, you're right, because after I knew you, I had a big, like, I feel that I had a breakthrough. It was in my early 30s, so it was even maybe, many years after you and I were seeing each other more often. And um, finally, I went through a really tough time. I call it like my apocalypse year, and all kinds of crazy
mm,
stuff was happening. But then on the other side, I suddenly had this sense of peace. And of course, I read a book called Outrageous Openness that really had an impact on me at that time as well. And the more I started to surrender and let go, all of a sudden I just felt it didn't happen instantaneously at all. But I got to a point of equanimity where we started this conversation and where I could just drop. I had so much anxiety in my 20s, so much anxiety and worry. And I'm a highly sensitive person. Brooke and I talked about this, and introverted and empathic. And I was always flooded by emotion and sensory everything. Just my whole life, I always felt like I was too sensitive for my own life. Like it just kind of was uncomfortable to be in my own skin. And that changed. And once I'm going to almost be 39 in a month. And when I was around 33, that's kind of when things just calmed down. And for the first 6 months of that, I felt like the other shoe was gonna drop because I had never experienced that sense of peacefulness in my mind before. And I was just like, "This is too quiet. This is too good. This baseline is, like, too calm. Something's gonna go wrong at any minute." And knock on wood, like, crazy things have happened, but not that daily drumbeat of anxiety that I used to have. And now, the pandemic and, like, losing 80% of my income in the span of a 2-week period, there were so many wild things that happened. Lebanon had that devastating explosion and the
mhm.
revolution, and so it's been a tough and trying time, but yes, like, having the tools now, and I think that's one of the perks of aging is just learning, and maybe it's hormonal too, maybe some of the hormones calm down a little bit, but having these personal practices to lean on So you mentioned free time, and the reason that I wrote this book, you shared the piece, how do we earn twice as much in half the time? In later years, I added with ease and joy while
Hmm.
serving the highest good. Because I realized that it's pointless to even, okay, great, you quit your big job, big fancy brand. Okay, you earn twice as much in half the time. But again, if you're still miserable and unhealthy, what's the point? So, with ease and joy while serving the highest good, that has been my compass, my guiding inquiry now for 11 plus years through all the trying times. And in this book, I'm trying to give all the systems thinking. Like the geeky way to describe the book is it's about operational efficiency, or it's like really kind of trying to deliver. I secretly wrote the book. I wanted managers to be able to give this to team members and say, here, this is
Mm,
how we work, and not have to train even their team, even if the business owner already knows everything I'm talking about, to share it in a way that's joyful and delightful. And food, I have a lot of food metaphors like cookie dough
mhm,
and cake baking and popcorn serendipity. Um, but that's it. Like, give us these really practical strategies. And also, as you were saying, like normalizing, Tim Ferriss really kicked it off with 4 Hour
mhm,
Work Week, of course. And even guys, even David Allen. But for those of us who I call high net freedom, there are things more important than money. And it's
mhm,
not that we don't want to earn abundantly, but I feel like the more of us we talk about not the hustle, not the grind, not the I'm gonna
mhm,
sleep when I'm dead. The other side,
mhm.
like let me take pristine care of my body. My body is my
Right.
business. My body does influence my best thinking and creativity. And that if we honor our body, and if you want to carve out 3 hours a day for exercise, do that. And that's the best way to run your business rather than
Mhm.
the other messaging that's really about growth at all costs. So this is also me kind of like trying to put a tally in the column for people who want to succeed, but only with health and wellness and relationships intact. And the last thing I'll say is that you mentioned podcasting and network building. I I often joke, and you've probably heard me say it. It's like the only reason I have friends is that I have 2 podcasts, and it's really the introvert's guide to making friends. I know there's so many
Mhm.
shows now, but everybody I know now, it's like it's just such a great way to connect with people, and so that has been very, very rewarding.
Yeah, and it's definitely again why I don't even look at my numbers. You mentioned I think a few
That's
times
good.
on your show that 3%, only 3% of podcasters actually can do this like at a full time where they're making money on it. But yeah, it's some really cool stuff. And I also heard you just talked with Cal Newport about I think he mentioned like pay if you pay a virtual assistant this much. And you start doing the math, and instead of thinking like I need to hustle, I need to do video clips
Yeah.
for social media and things like that. It's like there's resources there. Invest a little bit of money there. Invest a little bit more money in a personal trainer. Now your body's fixed in so many ways. Again, to bring it back to my kind of side of things is I see
Yeah.
a lot of folks who have been sacrificing the last 10, 15, 20 years
Yeah.
around my age, our age, I guess we're about the same age, is of, their health is not where it needs to be. And they're just on
Mm.
that grind of, I gotta provide for my family and that kind of thing. And it's definitely ways where we can be more efficient. And that's where, again, I tell folks, if you work with me for 6 months, not only are we not going to have problems with your symptoms, which is what folks are happy to pay. Like here is a big thing, $6,000 chiropractic traction packages where you go 3 times a week, which drives me crazy because they don't get the outcomes, which is really what we're talking about here is what's the ROI, what's the bottom line at the end of all that. And creating the systems. Another quote I'll attribute to you is train the system, then the person. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
it's if you just go and you're doing passive modalities, you're like crack my neck, make my neck feel better, and we're never giving you the system of, hey, you have to do this every day. You have to change the way you eat. You have to change the way you breathe.
The way you
And folks
sit
don't
at your
the way
desk,
all of it. Yeah, there we can go down. I can list off the
not
100
looking
things.
at your phone like this, you know?
So yeah, we are coming up on time. I want to be respectful of your time, but uh,
Oh.
I think we solved it. I think we did it. Jenny, thank you. We solved all the healthcare. Um,
You're
we
funny.
we
Hardy
couldn't have
har
done it
har. I
without
feel
you.
bad. I only ranted. See, I never get to talk about these topics because, you know, I don't know. I'm mostly like business, career type shows. So
Hmm.
I'm sorry if I ranted too much about those topics. You asked
No,
me to
it's
solve the
it's
problem, and instead I just got on a soapbox.
But
Sorry.
that's the reality of the situation. Is there is a big problem, and even folks like you who have all these awesome tools are struggling with this system, and it's such a big juggernaut of a system that it's hard
Yeah.
to and like the fact that you didn't know about health shares concerns me, Jenny.
I
But it
know. What
also
the
again
heck?
speaks to and I'm actually going to do a video in a bit of how every woman, and I don't know if you've ever done this and you don't have to share this now, but should go see a women's health pelvic specialist. And
Mm.
most women don't even know that exists and don't realize, like, hey, if
Mm.
I invest $150, even if you're paying cash base and the insurance doesn't cover it, like you're going to get more in 2 or 3 sessions with an issue that you probably deal with on a daily basis. And again, with it, even with the CrossFit, is a lot of women pee when they do double unders. I don't know how we got down this path, but it's just something
Wow.
I
Interesting.
yeah,
Women
and
who've
it
already had children or just any women?
especially
Yeah,
both.
'cause
It
a
can
lot
happen
of
in
people
both,
say they
but
struggle after they have kids, like, sometimes
definitely
just
much more
yeah,
common
yeah,
after, and again, going through the pregnancy process with my wife. Obviously, is bringing a
yeah.
lot of this stuff to my. I knew about it, and again, it was just never something I was going to specialize in. But it's something that I do think is vital to say, like, hey, like everyone should be aware of what effect dairy has on them or gluten has on them, and
Yeah,
it's not just
sugar. Yeah.
and sugar and all that stuff. And so there's ways to do the N=1 experiment. And I'll leave it on that because I can keep rambling, but I do want folks to make sure they can find Jenny because we have 2 minutes left of her time, and we want to be respectful of her free time
Well,
and
thank
how
you.
she sets up her systems to make sure we're very crisp and precise. So I do appreciate you coming on, Jenny. Anywhere else, I'll have all the links for you in the show notes, and she's very Googleable.
Amazing.
So any other last 5-second words or places
Well,
folks
I
can
would
find you?
just last thing is also alcohol. I've become more aware thanks to the Whoop tracker that
Hmm.
it's a dramatic decline in sleep quality when I have one. Yeah, there's mine.
Yeah.
And that was fascinating to see. I always knew it's probably not great for you, but now I like actively decline even a glass of wine or something because I know what's going to do to my sleep. So that was another really interesting learning of just the last few years. Thank you, Boseps, for all the great questions and conversation. This has been so fun. And then, yeah, listeners, watchers, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can search for Pivot with Jenny Blake or Free Time with Jenny Blake.
And one
Yeah.
last shout out or thank you for putting me on to, was it pod.link? That one?
Yes.
Super,
Yeah.
super useful. And again, in this wonderful world where we can just keep finding and figuring out which things are actually useful to hold on to, that's been super useful for me. And folks you can have one link for all the platforms, and it kind of I'm like I don't even know what
Yes.
half these icons are of what platform this even is, but
Because it's hard. That's the thing about podcasts. It's really hard to share them with friends because if
hmm
you send someone a link to Apple Podcasts, but they listen to Spotify, they just go,
hmm
they close the
yep,
app right away.
yep,
So pod.link allows you to find a show, send your friend the episode, and they can open the episode wherever they prefer to listen to podcasts. So it's really good. And if you
super
have a
duper
show like
useful.
Bo, don't forget to customize the link. Go down to the very footer and customize
I
for
need
your
to
show.
do that. Thank you for the reminder. On that note,
Yeah.
guys, we'll cut it out because Jenny's got to go. But hopefully, we'll get a part two sometime when she has
Yes.
more
Anytime.
free
I
time.
would love that. Anytime.
All right. Well, thanks again,
Yay.
Jenny, and
Thank
folks.
you. Thanks
Go check
everybody for
her out
listening and watching.
and go figure out how to save your time. It's the most important, vital resource that we have.